Well, let's talk about the all-important subject of food. I mean, what's a breakfast show without food, right? But what is the cost of that food? Where do we begin to reverse the skyrocketing prices of food, really? Because it looks like it's becoming oblivious to the pockets of people. It's just going high and high, regardless of the fact that salaries and wages aren't climbing as fast as that. And we're joined on the program this morning by Professor of Agricultural Economics, President of Farm and Infrastructure Foundation, Professor Balagade Ayola. Good morning, Prof. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning.
So looking at the new regime of inflation figures, and I choose to use that words carefully, we see that food inflation is now 26% with the rebased inflation figures or CPI figures, and that's from the 39% it used to be. That doesn't change the fact that, in fact, the food prices even increased, as it were, in some areas. So the numbers rebased doesn't mean that it reduced. First, I'd like you to speak to those figures because it might be tricky for those who are just looking at the numbers, seeing, it was almost 40%, now it's 26%. Things are getting better. Prof, is that a reflection of the reality for you?
Thank you very much. We need to be a little cautious in interpreting data that come from the experts. We have actually not reached the stage of comparison. Comparison intertemporal is a little unearly. For example, the basis upon which it was 39% before is different from the basis upon which they are saying it is 26%. Therefore, it's like comparing oranges and apples. They are not the same thing. And if we do so, we will miss the message of what pricing is all about. I am sure it is a concern for the recent rebasing by the National Bureau of Statistics that is making this topic so topical. But something had happened that the majority of the people have not captured in the process. And that is, rebasing has taken place. Rebasing means that the basis upon which you calculated before or you were used to calculating before had changed in January. December and before, it was different. Therefore, if you want to compare and say it is rising or it is reducing, we need another set of data before we can do that. For example, in January that we are being told is about 26%, we dare not compare it with December because they are different things. But we can compare it with February, March, April, when the current rebasing yardsticks still operate. So the National Bureau of Statistics have not actually finished its job before throwing this into the public domain for their own intuitive reasoning and analysis. So as of now, it's impossible practically to answer the question whether the prices are rising or they are reducing, because we cannot compare what happened in January with what happened before January yet.
But you know,
I'm not saying it's not comparable,
yeah,
but very soon we'll be in a position to do so.
Well,
so
Prof, we
right
can
now,
always
we
look
don't
at
have
our
sufficient
pockets.
information.
Indeed, but for every Nigerian, they can look at their pockets, look at the prices in the market, and can tell that these prices are not dropping. I think it's very easy for them. They know how much they used to spend on maybe a bucket of gari, for those who can afford that much, in maybe November.
You are correct about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. It is something, price mechanism is a moving target. We talk of price stability or price equilibrium. Otherwise, also known as market equilibrium. That is when prices have interacted across commodities, across species, to give peace to the mind of those who are using the prices to make a living, to buy this or to sell that. Now, some trigger factors bring disequilibrium sometime, and it is that disequilibrium that government comes in with appropriate policy to restabilize, to reestablish the equilibrium. If that is based on the calculations of NBS, presently, the point I'm making is that we miss the point. There are two instruments that are at work. One is the empirical estimates of the National Bureau of Statistics. The other is what you have just alluded to. Every human being going to market has an innate capacity to determine whether the price regime is increasing or is decreasing. If that is the one we are saying is only experiential by individuals, we cannot aggregate the feelings of so many people, thousands of people, and then conclude that it's rising or not. Because many factors are at play. For example, before I say that food price has increased compared to the past, I must make reference to where am I buying that product? Is it in the same place I bought it before? Is it the market? Is it the farm market, okay, which we call farm gate, where I'm buying it, where farmers or marketers have not added their own value? Is it in the dry season or the rainy season, and so on? All these come to play in the factor of rising and falling of prices. So I am perfectly in agreement with you that individuals who have money in their pocket are capable of evaluating the rise and fall. But we are not capable, based on that, to aggregate for everybody, because you cannot even assemble everybody. So we need to be a little patient with the figure, with the empirical method, which the NBS will continue to supply us before we can make that comparison. But my sense is this. My sense is that because we suffered a recent disequilibrium in the market for food, triggered by petroleum subsidy withdrawal, triggered by transportation costs, triggered by other factors, we tend naturally to feel that these things are still continuing to drive prices. Yes, as an individual, you have the freedom to do that, but you can't aggregate it for everybody.
All right, Prof. We're also expecting, perhaps by the beginning of the second quarter, we should be able to see perhaps a rebase of the GDP in itself. But the numbers that were released yesterday by the MBS showing that fourth quarter we grew by 3.8 or so. So in the year 2024, it's about 3.4%. But I'm looking at the numbers here saying overall annual growth of the sector in agricultural sector, which is the conversation we're having, stood at 1.19% in 2024 compared to 1.13%. So there's an appreciation, but it's marginal. You also look at the overall contribution of the sector in 2024 relative to 2023, 24%, 24.6% to 25.1%. If you look closely at those numbers, even though agriculture has stayed consistent, even in agriculture, if you break it down out of livestock, crop production, fishery and forestry, crop production is the leader with about 90%. Even if it's the biggest contributor to the GDP, but year on year, quarter on quarter, relative year to relative year, the appreciation is marginally low. What do we do to scale up those numbers?
You have changed from our previous topic of price instability to GDP differences. GDP, we have not been told it has been rebased.
Yeah, we know.
And traditionally, different sectors contribute differently to GDP. It depends on the volume of the food and other items in the basket that we are using to measure the GDP. It is indeed reasonable to expect that with some destabilization of market equilibrium in the food market we experienced up till last year at least, shares are becoming changed in the basket of goods and services constituting GDP. GDP of agriculture, GDP of livestock, GDP of the mineral sector, and so on. They are adjusting to the equilibrium changes within that period, and they will remain so until they rebase and put them on the same standard scale all over again.
So, Prof, let's head into the market now and really look at the pricing of certain food commodities. The price of a bag of rice has never been the same again, particularly from about last year, still hovering above 100,000 naira. We just need an explainer of why it's not coming down, because we have a rice mill in Lagos, we have a rice mill in Kebbi, we have rice mills in some other, eastern parts of the country. The price of palm oil is also skyrocketing by about 120%. What we used to get for about 5,000 naira is now shooting above 13,000 naira. But the price of beans has come down a bit, particularly in the last month or so. Can you do an explainer for us for, why we haven't and may not be able to recover from the price of certain commodities, and why some are coming down? And for those coming down, will they stay that way, or are they bound to go up again, particularly as we approach Ramadan? We just want to know whether, the reasons for these increases that we're witnessing are artificial or they're, organic, in line with the economic situation that we find ourselves in.
Simple. It is a matter of seasonality of agriculture. Agriculture is different from so many other commodities. You made reference to a number of agricultural commodities that are based on seasons in their production cycles. Oil palm, almost everywhere in the oil palm belt of this country, we are just beginning to harvest the bunches and process fruits. So within that period, there's a temporary scarcity in the market, and that will reflect in the price you will buy it right now. But just wait a little bit into the season we call it for season down in the southwest. That is the season when everybody is harvesting, everybody is processing, and large volumes of palm oil go to the market. Then it will reflect in the price to be coming down. But right now, you will still be watching the upward treatment. The same thing for cassava, the same thing for plantain. Plantain will not, is drying out now. And until new harvesting season begin around October and so on, that price reversal you are expecting, or price stability you are expecting for a period of time, will not take place. So you cannot take seasonality for granted for agricultural products, specifically food products. We are probably eating the same volume of food, but many factors interplay at different points in time. That is seasonality. Like seasonality, other factors like even foreign exchange, because we use importation to augment the internal production, notwithstanding how many factories are in Lagos for rice and so on. We still import rice. So if something happens in the exchange market, foreign exchange market, that destabilizes the volume that come in through that for augmentation purposes, we will observe it in the volume available in the market and by implication in the price at which we continue to buy it. The issue there goes beyond mechanistic calculations of this nature. It goes into the regime of policy making in the food market and policy implementation in the food market. We are not blessed with consistent, stable, and effective policies to deal with seasonality, variability, and such other disequilibrium factors in this country. And that is why my own organization feels that until we cure instability of that nature, until we cure policy impunity, what makes policy not to work during implementation, to stabilize, to help us keep what we have in excess during harvest and spread it over during lean season, and therefore stabilizing prices, is a matter of policy. It's not a matter of production itself. We are still producing, even when you consider what happens in the northeast, in the northwest, Boko Haram and all that. This country is still producing enough that we can eat and eat well.
But quite important point
policy environment is not right.
The policy environment, and I think that's a great place to anchor. We need to be more agriculture friendly. There needs to be some sort of rebate for people who want to purchase land for farming and all of that. But we have to thank you so much. We've been speaking with Professor Gbolagade Ayola, President of Farm and Infrastructure Foundation, also Professor of Agricultural Economics. Thank you for your time, Prof.
My pleasure always. Thank you, Janice.
So there you have it. We've touched on the very important topic of food. But when your belly is full, what's next? Work. But what is the value or quality of skills that we have available now, and how can you improve on it? Well, someone joins us to have that discussion, so please stay with us.